Hello, this is Jenny Fern, and today I would like to talk to y'all about a way to turn unwanted plants or weeds into fertilizer for the plants that you do want. So first, I guess I'll introduce you to some of the common, more massive weeds that I have growing in my garden. So ones that will be able to contribute more plant matter to the plants that I do want to have around. I have bristly oxtongue, which was just in the previous clip, and I think this is prickly lettuce. Those are all like common names, of course, so I guess I could look up the Latin names and post those on the screen for when I'm doing this later. But they are plants that tend to get quite tall, and they also have these wind dispersed seeds, so they spread all over the place. Bristly oxtongue is pretty terrible to deal with because it is very spiny and painful. Like the leaves, everything, they get stuck to you all over, and they're generally pretty tough. And they have some pretty thick, stout stems as well. So bristly oxtongue is one of the ones that I really don't particularly like. And then prickly lettuce is also a prickly, annoying weed. But it's not as big and vigorous as the bristly oxtongue. So I decided to trim quite a lot of the weeds surrounding the grapevines. I also trimmed some of the grapevines that were really wrapped around with bindweed, which is also one of the more annoying weeds in your garden. You could do that with this with that as well. So take any weed that you don't want in your yard and chop it up into pieces, put it in a bucket, fill that bucket with water, and let it sit for several days. That's the whole idea. You're basically making like a gross tea or broth out of your weed plants, and not weed plants, out of your weeds. They are plants, but I think that has a different connotation. And what you're doing basically is extracting the nutrients from these plants to leach out into the water, and then you can use that water, dilute it down when you're watering your garden, and give the plants that you like the nutrients from these plants. So it's a pretty good use of them. And I know that I tend to find with these big flowering head, kind of like dandelion head type weeds, they will explode into their little poof balls once you trim them off. And so if you just kind of have a heap of them in like a compost pile or something like that, you'll have a bunch of these flower heads exploding out in the coming days or like the next day. So it's a useful way to kind of keep that minimized as well if you're dealing with those types of weeds and you want to do something useful with them. You can drench them so then the seeds aren't really a problem. Then even when you're done with all of the liquid fertilizer that you'll be getting from this, you can then heap up all of your old plant matter debris into like a compost pile or a compost bin or something like that. I think at that point you might still have to deal with seeds, but not super sure. I have the remnants from this bucket in its own separate pile. It's not with the rest of my compost. Although I am also not somebody who is really trying to keep weed seeds out of my compost, and I am not doing particularly hot compost either. So I definitely expect to get weed seeds that are still viable within my compost. So after you have your bucket full of plant matter and water, you can let it sit for a few days, up to whatever time period, and then you can pull the liquid out of that bucket and dilute it with your water in your watering can and water your plants with it. It will get really smelly and gross, and it'll smell like a swamp, but it's good for your plants. So anyway, I hope you have a good day. Maybe try this out, but don't put it too close to your neighbors. And thanks for watching.